Hey, Marshall, thanks for joining us today, because I swear I couldn't ask for somebody better to break this down with your background. This is literally your wheelhouse. There's a lot of reporting this morning about some comments that the director of the Secret Service gave, kind of trying to, let's just call it what it is, point blank. And she's saying that what happened over the weekend was the responsibility of local law enforcement. Does that make sense to you?
So I did see that they they put out a statement this morning, also trying to clear that up.
Yeah.
The Secret Service absolutely needs state and local law enforcement to do what they do. As you know, these campaign trails, ton of events, but you're bouncing from city to city to city. You absolutely need the help of the state and local. You can't do it without them. So they are an integral part of it for sure. In this situation, I think it was just when you get into the perimeter and the size of the perimeter, I think it would have been, optimally, it would have been better to have the perimeter bigger. Typically, state and local are a little bit further out in this instance, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of personnel, but they're much closer in than, you would want, because they're not trained to do that stuff. They're trained in many other things that the Secret Service are not, but in that situation, yeah, they were probably in a little bit too close to the perimeter. The Secret Service should have had their own perimeter a little bit bigger, most likely.
So I talked to a very senior person within the service who said their responsibility, sort of by doctrine, is 1,000 yards. Is that right?
So that just totally depends on the terrain, indoor, outdoor. There is no set number for that. That's at the discretion of the advanced lead, the detail lead, and that's all worked out before. So there's not a set number like that. It would completely depend on the terrain.
Okay, so let's just walk through the incident. This guy, the shooter, is 130, 140 yards out, climbing onto a rooftop where people for 2 minutes, we played the video yesterday, for 2 minutes are yelling at law enforcement. There's a guy on the roof. Eventually becomes there's a guy on the roof with a gun. What should have happened?
So that's a comms breakdown, a communications breakdown, and that unfortunately that happens a lot in law enforcement, the military, the federal government. So when you have events as big as these and as many as you do, where you're going from event to event to event, multiple in a day, multiple protectees, you're joining with state and local law enforcement. You're having other federal agents, Homeland Security agents, a lot of other people helping out. You have different radio channels, different layers of communication. So, what it appears that happened is the communication breakdown it just takes too long. So if you and me are on the same radio frequency and I'm on a building and you're on a building, I can say, hey, right away, Sean, I see someone right across from me if you're another Secret Service agent. If you're with state and local police and you're not on the same frequency or you're on your own frequency, you kind of have a liaison or a point of contact that you're going through, the detail lead, one of the agents in charge. So now you're having multiple communications relayed. And that unfortunately takes time. In a situation like this, even seconds is too much time.
Well, and that's sort of the story that I've gotten from service folks as well, that, hey, look, local law enforcement goes back to the command center. Their command center guy tells our command center guy. Our command center guy tells our sniper team, right? So you got this lag delay. Got it. What I don't get is these stories now about local law enforcement engaging with the shooter, seeing him. And then why didn't they engage? And I get that's not your purview, but just straight up law enforcement 101, why wouldn't they have engaged with this shooter?
Yeah, I mean, that one's super tough, and that would just be completely speculating. I do want to wait to see when a little more comes out. The FBI investigation, obviously, all this stuff will come out. The public does want to know. That one's I've heard too many stories and too many variations to speculate on why they didn't engage in that instance.
So one of the stories that I heard from sources that I had was, hey, look, I've seen many people scope an event, right? They're far away and they'll use the scope of a gun to as like binoculars. And they said, we have to be right every time. If we shot an innocent civilian, you'd be talking about that for forever, that we shot some dude who was just getting a look. And he said, so we can't be wrong. On either end, we need to know that the person we're taking out is a threat. And we also need to know that that so that we get the right guy, but we also can't get the wrong guy. We can't get an innocent civilian that was just like thinking that they were, that this was their way of seeing something better. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely fair. And I'm not sticking up for anybody or justifying anything, but just being in these situations over the years, I stood on the north grounds of the White House for 10 years, looking out on Pennsylvania, looking out, watching all the people walk by, watching rooftops. I can't tell you how many times, thousands of, what's that person holding? Is that a cell phone? Is that something else? I can't see from here. Looking through your scope, looking through binos, whatever you have at the time. You're constantly trying to discriminate to see what the person has, where the person's at, what they're doing. There's someone on a rooftop. They're not supposed to be. 99 times out of 100, that was a janitor, somebody working there at the building in the area of the White House that didn't go through the proper protocols and let us know. Typically there's hey, somebody's going to be going off on this rooftop at this time. You can't just, there's someone up there, they're not supposed to be, I can't just shoot them. So, when we go through Secret Service Academy, 6-7 months, the first half is down Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. You get hammered with law classes, Graham versus Connor, ability, opportunity, intent. And then you go through scenario after scenario of when you can use force, when you can use deadly force. They drill it into you nonstop, and then all your requals, you get it again. So it's extremely hard. But yeah, you have someone on a roof. I can't, hundreds, if not thousands of times I've seen someone on a roof who might not have supposed to have been there, didn't get relayed properly. A staff member at a local hotel was just trying to get up and see the State of the Union motorcade go by or whatever, and they got through a door. It happens a lot, and it's tough.
Is that, but the idea that it happens a lot, is that in itself concerning? Like if you wanted to do harm to a protectee now, and you see how porous this is that a concern going forward now?
Well, one thing, unfortunately, with protection and security, it's not proactive. It's always reactive. No different than when I was working in my day, we were having people jump the fence on a weekly, monthly basis. College kids, scaling right over that thing. It was tough. But then you have 9/11. You have all these different things happen. Then the fence gets pushed out further. The bike racks get pushed out further. Now, after my incident in 2014, they eventually raised the fence up higher. So these things, the corrections do get made. Just the only unfortunate thing is it's usually reactive and not proactive.
Knowing what you know and seeing what you've seen with all these videos that are out there, do you think the protocols were followed?
So again, that would be speculating. It would depend on, a lot of times these events are planned months in advance. Other times they're the day before and you're rushing to get there. A lot of those, I can just think I started when I graduated the academy in 2006, started in 2006, 2007, I went right on the campaign trail. And, a lot of the events I was going to, I got there sometimes the night before, sometimes a couple hours before. There is people there ahead of time, but you do have to, it's a constant give and take, as with the protectee, the president, whoever it is, and their staff and security. And a lot of times you don't get the heads up that you would like. And I'm not saying this instance in particular, I don't know the specifics on how long this event was planned, but I know there were days where we were jumping to 4 or 5 different venues in a day. If people knew, how the magnitude of how many things go on. Remember, the White House is still guarded 24/7. The vice president's residence is still guarded 24/7. You have hundreds, thousands of people guarding these buildings, protectees, their families. In a campaign year, if you have the sitting president, now you're going to have 3 protectees at once and their vice presidents or their nominees bouncing around all over the country, event to event. People see this event and they just think, President Trump was there. This is a big event. It's planned. The security. What you don't see is behind the scenes of all the events, all the protectees bouncing from place to place. And that's not to justify anything. That's just to paint a picture of how these things usually go. You will have a couple people doing it in advance, but when I was on the campaign trail, I was not an advance officer. So everywhere I got was either the night before or just hours before the protectee arrived, and I'm in a random place that I've never seen before, never been. No time to do a walkthrough, just because I just came from another event. And when I talk about personnel, that's why the personnel is limited. That's why I'd like to see it increase, because it's not fair to a lot of.
All right, so let's talk about the personnel. A lot of chatter online. I'm just going to get it out there about some of the female agents. They're saying they're not tall enough, that they didn't look like they were in shape physically, that they didn't have the proper training. There's an issue with that one agent not being able to properly holster her weapon. That goes to training. So address, if you can, I mean, I don't have a ton of time, but I mean, is there a concern about training, standard operating procedures, height and size of the agents? Are these valid concerns?
I mean, you have these concerns in the workplace. You have these concerns in every workplace.
But in my workplace, Marshal, I agree with you. But there's a difference between my workplace. I'm not guarding the president of the United States, and I get it. I've seen this in every aspect of our workforce. But I guess the question is, at some extent, when you're doing it in the Secret Service, if you don't do it right, somebody could lose their life.
Yep. And I know you're familiar when the director did come out with the 30 for 30, 30% female by 2030. I know that caused a stir in the media, and obviously within the Secret Service as well, because to do that, yes, you do have to lower standards. That's not a secret. That's a fact. If you're saying you're going to hit a certain number by a certain point, and you're not hitting that number by the term by all means necessary, you do have to lower it. You see it all the time. There is instances where you have people that didn't pass the same training other people said. I'll leave it at that. And now that you see it on TV, like a lot of people are the height requirement. Yes, it does. The average person just looking at that is like, how come someone is significantly shorter than the person they're protecting, when especially the president's inner detail, the PPD, or the specific detail, their specific body, the human shield, the meat shield, the layer of protection, that's a lot different than somebody who's outpost standing. Even a sniper on a roof, height wouldn't really matter as much. But if you're standing next to the president or the presidential nominee, the height obviously was very visual. There was a very, very big visual aid when you saw the discrepancy in the height difference.
Yeah, and I will just say this, like, I agree with you. Just so, I mean, there's a couple issues that I don't want to waste a ton of time on, but I do think you're right on the quota-driven number, that you're going to end up screwing this up, because as opposed to saying we want to increase recruiting among women, that's fine. Bringing more women into the workforce is great. But saying that you have to hit a number is going to cause a problem. The other issue is there are tall women. To me, it wasn't a gender issue, right? It was is this person properly trained in size for the job that they're given? And you're absolutely right. That doesn't mean you can't do something within that realm. Some people who are, I'm 5'6", I won't make the NBA. I hate to say it. It's not going to ever happen. And there are certain jobs that I won't get because of my size. On the flip side, maybe I'm more than qualified for certain things because I'm shorter. But this is not, we shouldn't be driving outcomes just because of, to your point about quota. I want to ask you two more quick things. One, Mark Halperin, who's been on the show a bunch, said something to me the other day that I thought was interesting. He said that when Trump got up to do that fist bump, there was something weird about the way that the service let his head up and out there, because the shooter, we didn't know that there wasn't another shooter. Is that a fair critique, or was it just that Trump got his head up there and you can't always, the protectee is going to do what they're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, trying to handle former president of the United States, whoever you're protecting, I mean, it's as hard a job as you can have. And it's extremely, extremely delicate. Like you said, all these pictures, they'll live on forever. Also, if you have a Secret Service agent pushing the president's head down and he's fighting with him, those photos are going to live on forever as
and
well.
If it's Donald Trump, he's going to get that head up.
I mean, that was my possible situation you could be in. I've discussed this before, just guarding several different people. Your protectee. I know if I have someone who is, yes, if there's a security issue, get me out right away. We know when I started in 2006 with George Bush, he wouldn't go anywhere without the dogs. If there was a code red, you had to know where the dogs were, or he wasn't gonna go anywhere without them. After one or two times, you learned, you know what? I'm going to know where those dogs are at all times because it makes my job easier. And you learn this about different protectees. What you learn very easily with President Trump there is if you don't allow it, it's a give and take. And was it risky? Of course, but it could have been riskier to him not coming up on the stage or him trying to get back up on the stage or him refusing to leave, because in that moment, knowing him, if you protect him, you start to develop personal relationships as well. You now know in that moment, he's going to want to do something. He's not going to let you push him down and push him off the stage. So I personally, I agreed with that decision. Was it risky? Absolutely. But again, it's a give and take. If you know him, he's not going to let you rush him off that stage. He is going to want to do a show of strength, and that's his specific personality, and other people are different. So I guess you can, and again, you don't know what they're hearing in their earpieces, the shooter's down, a lot of other things. But in that moment, if it was me and that decision is made, he's going to stick his head up, hold his arm up, he's going to wave, do whatever he does, and then I can get him out of here. Or I'm going to get in an argument or a wrestling match with the former president of the United States on stage in front of the world, because I know that he will not leave until he does what he has to do. It's a hard decision, and it's made, there's no time to think about that. That's just a reactionary decision.
All right. Yes or no? Do you have confidence in Director Kim Cheadle? Should she be fired?
That's too far out of my purview. That I'm not going to.
All right. Last thing, you brought up the dogs with President Bush. You have a very personal story about your dog. You're the president of an organization called Hurricane Heroes. Tell me a little bit real quick about what you've done and what you're hoping to accomplish with your organization.
Absolutely. So coincidentally, our charity came out of a Secret Service security lapse as well in 2014. As you remember, an individual jumped the fence and got into the White House. And a few weeks later, an individual jumped again, and me and my dog Hurricane happened to be there. President Obama and his family were just inside there, right outside the movie theater. And my dog Hurricane stopped the intruder before he got into the house. So that was a very historical moment. And, we took that and turned it into a charity to raise awareness for working dogs. So we launched Hurricane Heroes, a 501c3 nonprofit, and we cover retired dogs. We cover medical bills for about 140 police, military, and federal government retired working dogs. So it's an amazing charity. It's all volunteer. We took a security incident that happened and a security failure, and we turned it into a positive, and now we do events and fundraise all over the country for these working dogs.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.